The shadow people of Sleepy Hollow. The Colonial road stalkers. Let's move into a story that is as old as the dirt beneath Sleepy Hollow itself, tale whispered in dim taverns, scratched into dusty diaries, and passed from one trembling mouth to another over the centuries. This is the chilling account of the shadow people of Sleepy Hollow. Dark silhouettes said to stalk travelers along the winding colonial roads, feeding on their fear, lingering in their nightmares, and sometimes dragging them into a place from which they never return. Sleepy Hollow, New York, has always been a place where the veil between the living and the dead is thinner than a sheet of autumn fog. The locals know the feel of the air when the sun drops too quickly and the cold sweeps in with unnatural speed. They know the way the shadows stretch longer than they should, even when there's no moon. But those who dare to walk the old colonial roads after midnight often learn that some shadows are not born from light, at all they are alive, and they are watching. The road in question is called Old Briar Patch Lane. On maps, it barely exists. Thread of faded ink, curling through the hills between forgotten graveyards and crooked fence lines. The earth there still holds the bones of men who died when the colonies were young. And some say the land was cursed even before the first European boots trampled it. Witches, they whisper. Dark pacts sealed with blood under the hanging limbs of oak trees. Whatever the truth, the result has always been the same. Once the night falls, shapes emerge from the tree line, human in outline, but darker than pitch, sliding silently across the road as if searching for something or someone. Eleanor Marsh learned this the hard way in the fall of 1987. She was 19, home from college, and restless in a town where nothing ever seemed to happen. She decided to walk to a friend's house on the other side of town, cutting through Old Briar Patch Lane to shave off 20 minutes. She'd been warned about the road before, but warnings are easy to ignore when you're young and certain of your invincibility. The lane was quiet at first, too quiet. Even the crickets had stopped their nighttime chorus. Her footsteps crunched on the gravel, and her breath steamed in the cold. About halfway down the lane, Eleanor noticed that the moonlight had dimmed out from a cloud, but as if something large had passed over it. She froze, scanning the trees, and that's when she saw them. At first, they were only figures at the edge of her vision, blacker than the darkness surrounding them. 3, maybe 4 of them, standing perfectly still between the trees. They had no faces, no features, only the suggestion of heads and shoulders. She thought they were people playing a cruel prank until one of them stepped forward, and its form seemed to stretch unnaturally, as if it were sliding closer rather than walking. Her instinct screamed at her to run, but her legs locked in place. The shadows were moving now, drifting across the road ahead of her. She turned sharply to go back the way she came, but the lane behind her was no longer empty. Another figure stood there closer than she thought, possibly its head tilted, as though studying her. The air grew heavy, pressing on her chest. She couldn't hear her own heartbeat over the low hum that seemed to vibrate through the ground, rattling her teeth. One of the shapes glided toward her, stopping only a foot away. Eleanor could see no eyes, yet she felt its gaze like cold needles on her skin. Then, without sound or warning, the shadow's arm extended toward her, elongating unnaturally, and brushed against her sleeve. It was colder than ice, and in that instant, her vision warped. The road blurred, and she caught glimpses of something else. She saw a field full of unmarked graves under a blood-red sky. She saw a man in colonial garb, screaming silently as several shadows pulled him down into the earth. She saw herself lying motionless on the lane, her lips blue. The vision was gone in a blink, and Eleanor was back on the road, gasping for air. Something in her finally broke free, and she bolted, sprinting down the lane until the familiar lights of her neighborhood flickered ahead. When she turned back, the road was empty, but the cold had followed her all the way home. Eleanor never took that path again. She rarely spoke of it, but in her later years, she admitted that she never felt truly alone again. The shadows didn't vanish after that night. She would catch them in mirrors, or see them lingering in the corners of rooms, just as the lights went out. And sometimes, when she was lying in bed and the moonlight fell just right through her curtains, she would see the outline of a head and shoulders standing at the foot of her bed. Her story was not unique. Over the decades, others have seen the same dark forms. A truck driver in 1995 reported hitting what he thought was a person on Old Briar Patch Lane only to find nothing there. No damage to his truck, just long smears of frost across his windshield. A pair of hikers in 2003 found themselves chased off the lane by several shapes that moved faster than running men, yet made no sound. And in 2019, a young couple broke down on the lane at midnight. The man called a tow truck while the woman swore she saw a figure kneeling beside the car, its face inches from her window. She said it smiled at her, but there were no teeth, just an empty, gaping void. Historians have dug into the area's past, trying to explain the sightings. They point to the Revolutionary War battles fought nearby, to the mass graves left behind when disease swept through the settlements, even to an execution of 3 alleged witches in 1692, though that last detail has never been fully proven. Some think the shadow people are restless spirits, their forms blurred by time and violence. Others think they're something far older, something that never lived, but has always been here, feeding on fear and solitude. Whatever they are, they never speak. They never make a sound. They simply watch, and wait, and close in. Those who escape their attention say you should never stop walking on Old Briar Patch Lane. Never look directly at them. And above all, never, ever let them touch you. Even today, Sleepy Hollow locals will warn outsiders to avoid the lane entirely after dark. Some refuse to drive it even in daylight, swearing they've seen shadows slide across the pavement in the heat of noon. The stories continue, the sightings pile up, but the road remains, twisting, narrow, lined with gnarled trees that blot out the stars. It's still there, waiting for its next traveler boulder, foolish enough to cross it. And maybe, just maybe, tonight, they're waiting for you. This has been Farcical Fears, bringing you another nightmare rooted deep in America's haunted soil. If you dare, subscribe for more chilling tales from the dark corners of history and the human mind. And remember, what's the scariest thing that's ever happened to you? You tell me in the comments.